We are live. Today, what I want to talk about is the coronavirus, COVID-19. What's going on is pretty crazy. Some people are taking it not too seriously. We've all heard that if you're young, you got nothing to worry about. It's only targeting old people. Well, I got news for you. That is total bullshit. Let's get something straight. The coronavirus is 20 times more lethal than the flu. Okay? Not only that, but this is one of the most contagious viruses that we've ever had. So the anatomy of the virus is that it has these spikes. If you've look up the coronavirus on Google Images, you will see that it has all these little spikes. What each spike is an injector. It's kind of like dandelion, but kind of like pollen. It gets caught in your lungs or on another surface like an open wound or something, and it will inject using these little spikes. So it's extremely easy for this thing to get caught on a human body. And as you might know, that the lungs, that's where the blood oxygen exchange goes on. It's like having open wounds. The lungs are entirely like open wounds. So they're one of the kind of epicenters for this virus to invade, since everyone has these open wound lungs. So you may have heard that wearing a respirator is or a mask, right, is not going to help. It's only going to help prevent someone from spreading it. It won't help you from stopping getting it. Now that is total bullshit. I mean, you can think about it logically. If someone sneezes in your face, wouldn't having some protection in front of your mouth prevent that from going inside your mouth? I mean, it's just fucking obvious, excuse my vernacular. The reason that this has been said was originally because there were such shortages and because they didn't want people panicking. They wanted medical staff to get the masks and respirators first. So what happened was they made up this myth that masks and respirators don't help, but that's absolutely ludicrous and totally false. So I made a list. The list is in the video description. It's a list of different resources and products that can help you avoid getting the coronavirus. Because as it looks like, right, the coronavirus curve, right, there's something called flattening the curve. So right now, this thing looks like it's exponential. Now, an exponential growth in the real world is actually impossible, right? What usually happens is any kind of exponential growth reaches a saturation point, and it will turn into what's called a sigmoidal function, where it starts to flatten out. So as you can see this image, if it went exponential, it would shoot up to the moon. But once everyone has it, then it starts to level out because you can't spread it to someone who already has the virus. Unfortunately, we don't know if the saturation point, what's called the inflection point in mathematics, is going to be when the whole population has this virus. And you may say, okay, well, UK said, oh, let's give everyone herd immunity. Let's just have everyone get it. We can't prevent it. That's absolutely inane. Because as I linked over here, I prepared this list before starting this video. There is lasting damage for even survivors. The worst hit coronavirus survivors could be left with lung damage that takes up to 15 years to heal. There's some images showing the lungs of people who have survived this thing, and they look like they were torn up by Wolverine. So it's brutal. People are saying, oh, well, it's only a 2%, 1 out of 50 chance I die, right? Or for younger people, different percentage, but right? It's a low chance. Well, first of all, the flu is 0.1%. So coronavirus is 20 times more lethal than the flu. But then you have to add on the fact that once you get over the flu, you're usually pretty okay. You don't have lasting damage. Now, the problem is the coronavirus attacks what's called the ACE2 receptor, angiotensin converting enzyme 2. You may have heard some people on ACE inhibitors for their heart, basically to dilate the blood vessels, right? Since ACE2 receptor is mainly in 3 places: the heart, the kidneys, and the lungs. It's found throughout the body, but these are the main 3 places. And in fact, these are the places that people are having difficulties when they get infected by the coronavirus. Many patients have died from heart attacks. Not from suffocating to death, but heart attacks. Because this virus will start to multiply in both the lungs, the kidneys, and the heart. So Back to the virus, though. It is not the flu. It attacks organs. It is not the flu, right? Attacks ACE. It goes on. It works through this ACE receptor, right? And it causes what's called a cytokine storm in the lungs, which leads to secondary infections, because they've actually shown that giving people, let's say, an antibiotic like amoxicillin or something like that will help with the coronavirus when compared with the antivirals or these other treatment options, because when they get the pneumonia from the virus, and it comes in secondary infections in the lungs, the cytokine storm causes all this damage to the lungs when your own immune system starts producing these cytokines to deal with the virus, and then those end up attacking your own lungs. But anyways, let's not get on a tangent, but back to the main point. The point is, this thing will leave lasting damage. So people going around in spring break, and people walking around getting takeout and all this stupid behavior, right, is totally irrational. And it's not only hurting them, but it's hurting other people, because this virus leaves lasting damage. And just because you don't die from it doesn't mean that it's not going to be hell on earth where you're struggling to breathe every time and you don't have 15 years of impaired lung function. Especially, let's say you do sports. I mean, anything. Just even a normal person who just has a desk job. Who the fuck in their right mind wants permanent lung damage? So, yeah, 2% death rate, but the percentage of actual damage much, much higher. And now, let's pair it with this issue of ventilators. So there's a story of this Chinese guy who got it. He was, they didn't have ventilators, so his family literally had a bag that they kept squeezing, for about 36, 48 hours straight. I don't know, maybe it was more than that. Was it 10 days? I don't remember. But they were squeezing this bag manually to ventilate the guy until they actually could get a real ventilator. They took shifts. They took turns, 24 hours straight, manually ventilating this guy. That's how much they cared about this dude, right? Who's going to do that for you? I can't even expect someone to do that for me. Not saying no one would, but I wouldn't expect that, because that's a ridiculous amount of dedication to saving someone's life. But hell, that's what will have to be done, because Governor Cuomo, if you're watching the reports today, Governor Cuomo says, we have the beds, we just don't have the respirators. And, not the respirator, the ventilators, right? That automatically breathe for you. Now, just because you have a ventilator doesn't mean it's still not going to be hell on earth. See, the problem with ventilators is people try to breathe against them. Ventilators control the rhythm of breathing, right? And so if you are on a ventilator, you'll have a reflex to try to breathe on your own, right? And it's gonna be the most awkward, terrible feeling. I've talked to people who have been intubated and ventilated. It is a terrible, terrible thing to have to. It's like hell on earth every moment. You think being a lab rat's bad, right? Well, that's kind of like it. That's what hell on earth is, when every moment is excruciating. So, nonetheless, that's if you get a ventilator to save your ass. And yeah, just because you're 20, 30, whatever, most people need ventilators. Doesn't matter what age you are. Most of the time, you will need a ventilator to deal with this if they don't give you the proper antivirals. And even if they do, those don't always work. So, we don't have the ventilators, right? We just have beds. Bed doesn't mean shit. In fact, they're telling most people who get the virus, go isolate at home. Yeah, just stay home. You'll be fine. Right, while you're wheezing and while you don't know if you're going to fucking die, just stay home, right? So, number one, what this video is meant to do is to, at least I hope so in the last 5 minutes, let you know that this thing is serious and you don't want to get it. You don't want to take that risk. Because 2%, number one, is a 1 in 50 dice roll, right? And then if you look at the age group, sure, you can narrow it down more and more and say, okay, well, I'm young, so it's this and that. But you just don't want to get it because of lasting damage, the chance of death, the fact that most good treatment involves a ventilator, which we don't fucking have. You don't want to get it, all right? Now, let's go through my list. So lasting damage. So the mutation chart. Let's talk about why this thing is so scary. If you look here, I've got a list, or I've got a graph of the coronavirus genome sequenced by this great resource, nextstrain.org, right? They do this for other viruses too. As you can see, the data set, we can do Ebola, enterovirus, flu, measles, mumps, right? But they're doing, if you choose NCOV, NCOV, right, and we do by country and do the radial option, we can see how this thing has mutated from the start of it, right? December, was it 24th? We can see that's when that genome was submitted, right in the center. That's where this virus has essentially spread from. That's like patient 0, or at least as far back as we can index, the common ancestor. And then we can see that Brazil, Panama, Mexico, USA, Canada, this continent essentially has one strain, this red area over here, right? And then we can see if we look at Italy, right? That's that greenish yellow strain is entirely gapped up. It's separate. It's like an island from the U.S. strain. Yes, they came originally from the center strain, right? But they've got probably an especially virulent strain, because as we can hear, Italy, as we hear Italy, a lot more people are dying, and it seems to be a lot worse. And so, that could be demographic-wise. There are a lot of old people in Italy, at least as far as I understand it. But nonetheless, it is a different strain, and some strains could be a lot more virulent than others. And that's part of why this thing's so scary, is we don't understand what we're dealing with right now, because all of the experts, might as well just call them egg-spurts, since we all come from sperm, right? I mean, and a lot of them just don't know anything more than we really know. A lot of these experts, they don't exactly know what to expect from this virus. No one does, because all we can infer is from countries that have already gone through it, like Korea and Japan and China. But of course, the Chinese news, they kicked all our reporters out. We kicked all their reporters out as a response. And as far as I heard, I saw videos where people were held at gunpoint, being put in the boxes on the back of trucks. And I heard the crematoriums were on full burn. But now they're saying, oh, it's all resolved. We've totally contained it. So you take that with a grain of salt, because we're dealing with China here. And the economies and stock markets are crashing everything. India is not releasing any information, obviously, because they want their stock market to stay pretty static. I mean, who the fuck wants their stock market crashing? But we all know that's bullshit. I mean, India's, come on. Look how many people are there in such dense and unsanitary conditions. So, nonetheless, all we can do is base what we think is going to happen about the virus based on previous kind of infections in other countries. A month back, 2 months back. But the problem is we're dealing with a mutating virus that could be getting worse and worse and worse. Maybe right now, this red portion right here is 10 times worse than the one in the middle that it started with. And it can even reinfect people possibly. As it mutates, just like influenza keeps infecting every season because it mutates, this thing could reinfect you. Like, let's say you got the red strain over here in the U.S., and then that Italian strain manages to come over. As you can see, there's some red dots actually in Italy. So the things are bouncing around. Look at the colors, like a rainbow over here when you're dealing with this country and that country. So yeah, it's mutating. We don't actually know if it can reinfect people, if it will continue mutating to the point that this becomes a seasonal, a recurrent thing. So thinking that this is going to be over in a month, in 10 months, that it's not going to be a recurrent thing is wishful thinking. I hope that's the case. I really do. But you got to start getting your lifestyle in check if you want to survive this thing and you want to thrive and you want to be around to see what happens. Okay? So I'm going to forget about the virus's effects and all this now, and I'm going to start talking about ways in which you can survive this thing by boosting your immunity and taking the right substances and some possible treatments. So let's talk about vitamins and just overall antiviral kind of substances at first. Things that boost your immunity. I'll get back to quinine, or quinine, however you pronounce that. People pronounce it differently. I think it's a UK versus US pronunciation. But I'll get back to that in a sec. But let's just talk about things that you can take that are pretty much innocuous that can boost your immunity. So the sulfuric vegetables, right? Garlic, onion, and ginger. Now, I've in my link in the description, I have given NIH studies that kind of show why these substances, why these vegetables or roots or whatever you'd like to call them, ginger, garlic, and onions help boost your immunity and wipe out viruses. So garlic, we know there's this substance called allicin, which exhibits pretty strong antibacterial and antiviral behavior in the body. Onions and ginger seem to be similar and something to do with basically sulfuric compounds. Sulfur tends to be a natural antibiotic and also seems to help in destroying viruses. So these three substances, I would say, try taking them daily. Take a clove of garlic daily. Don't overdose on it. It's very hard to overdose on it, but if you don't feel so well from taking too much of it, well then just take what you're comfortable with. But that can definitely help boost your immunity. Now remember, this is an immunity game. The more you boost your immunity, the less that a small load of the virus will have a chance to gain a foothold on your system. The way viruses work is probabilistic. So that's why they say when you wear an N95 mask, it doesn't necessarily prevent all virus particles from getting in your system, because virus particles can be very small on the level of microns, half a micron, less than that, nanometers and whatnot. But by having good immunity, it will take a larger amount of the virus to gain a toehold on your system. So before I go back to the substance and stuff, let me explain this reasoning. So there's something called PrEP, right? With HIV, right? It's called pre-exposure prophylactics, right? And the idea behind PrEP, you may know some gay folk. You may know some gay folk who engage in unprotected sex. And what they found is that when a gay guy is on PrEP, right, which is basically just a cocktail of these antivirals, right, and they're pretty harmless because they basically take this PrEP, this tenofovir or these other ones, right, every day. Right? They'll take these drugs every day. They'll have a constant concentration of these drugs in their system, and they live with it just fine. Just like people can essentially do the same thing when it comes to herpes. They can take acyclovir, valacyclovir, famiciclovir every day to have a concentration in their blood, and those drugs are relatively harmless. The side effects are few and far none. So you basically can have these drugs in your system, and then they go ahead and they have unprotected sex, even with people with HIV and AIDS, and they do not contract it. Right? Highly effective, reducing the risk of contracting AIDS or HIV up to 99% through even unprotected sex. So all I'm saying is that when you have the right stuff in your system is like the fortress of solitude. It's very hard for a virus to invade your system when you have the right drugs or the right essentially chemicals that may be biological or pharmaceutical, but if you have the right stuff flowing through your veins, then you basically are much more protected against viruses. Okay, so that's where the reasoning comes from. So garlic, ginger, onions, probably know this. It's kind of age-old wisdom. In fact, garlic was actually called the Russian penicillin. If you look it up, Russian penicillin. During World War II, because after running out of antibiotics, the Russian government turned to this treatment for its soldiers. Right? Isn't that crazy? They called it vegetable Viagra, plant talisman. Okay? That should tell you something. All right. Now, vitamin C, everyone knows, but there is something about vitamin C that you might not know, is that the reason fruits tend to be a better source, but I would not take fruits these days because you don't know if a fruit has a virus. You can't really cook a fruit. I'd recommend, if you're going to eat anything, that you have it cooked. Buy frozen food, or if you buy fresh food, cook it, nuke it in the microwave. All right, don't be obsessed with it takes away the vitamins and minerals if I microwave. That's total bullshit. All right, these things for the most part don't get denatured by heat. All right, you'll be okay. Take a multivitamin, nuke the food. Okay, citrus bioflavonoids. Right, so flavonoids have been basically shown to exhibit antioxidant, anti-inflammatory, anti-cancer, bacterial, fungal, and viral activity, right? And citrus fruits do have these bioflavonoids. So I gave a link. As I go through all these things, there are links to purchase these products that I found on Amazon with Prime shipping. I only chose stuff with 2-day shipping because I know everyone needs to get this stuff as soon as possible. And I only chose sold by Amazon because we know a lot of third-party vendors are trying to gouge, trying to maybe not even send tainted products or the wrong product. But soldbyamazon.com tends to be a guarantee that you're getting what you pay for, and that'll be at a decent price. Now, some of the products may be out of stock, but I encourage you to just go look on Amazon, click Prime, and try to find similar thing if the link I gave you does not work. So vitamin C is great, but you also probably want to get the flavonoids, because vitamin C is just going to be the vitamin C that was found in the fruit, maybe made in a pharmaceutical method, which is just as good. It's all just vitamin C, absorbic acid, but you do want to, or sorbic acid, sorry, but you do want to get the bioflavonoids if you can, separately. So I give a link to that. Flavonoids are really good stuff. Okay, now let's talk about the other things. Vitamin D. Vitamin D has been basically set as a low international required value for a long time, and they keep boosting it up and up and up. There's all these studies coming out that vitamin D in higher doses is pretty safe. I personally take 10,000 a day. I did that for months, got my blood tested, and my blood's always been under 100 nanograms per milliliter. So I never went above that threshold. I'd recommend everyone take at least 10,000 units a day. It has been shown immensely to boost the immune system. It's extremely correlated with immune health. All right. And normally you get it from the sun, but of course we're going to be indoors most of the time, and even the sun's not going to give you that many units. So I'd recommend doing this. It's been actually mega dose before, where they give kids, I think it was 10,000 or 100,000 units per kilogram of body weight, and the kids were absolutely fine. Some of these kids did have anemia and stuff, so that is a tremendous dose. I would not recommend mega dosing to that extent, but do take 10,000 units a day. That's relatively safe. You can look at all the studies. Remember, don't take my word for it. If you really want to vet what I'm saying, go ahead and Google it. Look at the NIH studies, and you'll see what I'm saying is true, and that I validated all this stuff. I just can't post 100 studies at once. I compiled this list in a day. Everyone's asking me to put this stuff out, so I'm doing the best I can. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. You can always email me at andy@churchofthought.org, and I will respond. Or just post a YouTube comment, actually, and I'll respond to that. Okay, so Manuka honey. Manuka honey, also another great substance. We all know honey itself, just ordinary honey, tends to help people heal faster from colds, which tend to be viruses. Most colds are not bacterial. And then, of course, bacteria, too, has anti-inflammatory, antioxidant effects. I personally have been taking Manuka honey for years. And Manuka honey is rated on a scale called the MGO or UMF scale. And MGO is based on this substance, right? Called, let me see, it's methyl glyoxal, right? Manuka honey is rated on this. That tends to be an antibiotic. It exhibits a lot of antibiotic activity against E. coli and Staph aureus. That's what's found in Manuka honey. But just Manuka honey in general also tends to be antiviral. Now, we may not know exactly which substance, perhaps not the MGO that's causing the antiviral activity, but you want to get a Manuka honey that has a high MGO, because that will indicate that it's very pure and has the other substances in high concentration that will probably be antiviral. So I did link to a Manuka honey that has 800 MGO, and it's active 20 plus on the UMF scale. And basically that's about the highest, as you can see here, 20 plus. And you see the MGO equivalences on the right. I've taken Manuka honey here and there, and it's always made me feel better. I've always gotten over sicknesses faster with it. I was sniffling yesterday, took some Manuka honey, and I feel great today. Sure, that's anecdotal, but the studies also kind of back that up. And remember, we're dealing with this virus. Not everything's going to be 1,000% airtight. You may say, oh, well, that evidence, isn't definitive. And I say, okay, it's not definitive, but you got to do what you can when it comes to this thing. It's not like the government is handing out cures here and there. So a cure for this virus is actually, even with fast track, a vaccine is, and remember, it's a vaccine. It's not going to cure you if you have it. The vaccine is about a year away, clinical trials and all that. So we got to do what we can, and that's all I'm trying to provide here. Now, you may have heard just today, Trump gave a speech about chloroquine, and he went over how that has been. There's multiple studies coming out that show that chloroquine or quinine has been shown apparent efficacy in treatment of COVID-19. Not only that, but some people have linked me to studies showing that if you take it consistently, it can act like that PrEP, that pre-exposure prophylactic, where you won't get it if you have this quinine in your system. Now, hydrochloroquine, which is Plaquenil, is used for rheumatoid arthritis and a bunch of other like lupus, autoimmune diseases. But that's all based on quinine, which originates from the cinchona bark. That's where it was originally isolated. Just like aspirin was, originally isolated from white willow bark, quinine was originally isolated from cinchona bark. And then they made these analogs. They first made chloroquine, and then they made hydroxychloroquine, aka Plaquenil. So, look, if you can try getting it from your doctor, but I myself personally have just ordered cinchona bark. You do what you can. Cinchona bark is all over the internet. You just have to take a certain amount of grams per day. I didn't put a dosing chart, but if you go ahead, you post your weight, I will compute it for you, and I will link you to the way you compute it. But you can always Google cinchona bark dosing and find out what the safe values are for yourself. You don't want to take too much of this stuff because it can cause ringing in the ears and it can cause temporary blindness. So and trust me, that's not going to happen when you take lower doses. It's all dose dependent. Every drug has side effects, especially when you take too much of it. But people have been taking quinine for years for malaria and for other ailments. So it is relatively safe, and it has been shown efficacy in treating COVID-19 and also preventing it. Is one of the Trump mentioned it today, so it is medical guy. So it is one of the kind of promising treatments that we have and prophylactics to prevent oneself from getting it. Now, quinine and zinc seem to have a synergistic relationship where it looks like the quinine is actually taking the zinc and acting as a zinc ion transporter, bringing the zinc into your cells to destroy the virus. So we all know zinc has some antiviral activity, but it looks like the quinine kind of builds off of that, pulls the zinc that you already have, brings it into the cells like a Trojan horse. So I recommend zinc supplementation to make sure your body has enough zinc so that when it comes to the quinine can use the zinc. Because the quinine may not be as effective if you do not have good zinc levels. Okay, so let me just scroll down, make sure we talked about all these different substances. Now let's talk about safety. Let's talk about filters. Let's talk about masks. Let's talk about all that. So it's total bullshit, like I mentioned before, that a mask or respirator cannot help you, all right? Any kind of mechanical separation between your lungs, right, your nose, your mucous membranes. Remember, this thing can also spread through your eye. Any mucous membranes, right, can be a vector for transmission of this drug, especially if someone literally coughs and their liquid saliva, little, what do you call, particulates, right, those end up spraying, the droplets end up spraying into your eyes. And they can be really small, these droplets, and kind of float on the air. Right? Someone coughs, it's like an aerosol. You may not see those little aerosol droplets, but they're there. Okay, so it is total bullshit that a mask or respirator only prevents you from spreading it to others, that it doesn't prevent you from getting it. Total bullshit. Do not buy that for a second. It may have been spread because medical officials, medical staff could not get enough for themselves because people on the streets and people, civilians were buying them up. So they put out that misinformation. That is a crock of shit. It is totally false. Okay, now let's talk about particulate filter grades. So when you buy a pre-made respirator, right, there's something like what's called a Safety Fit Plus. This one's Honeywell's. 3M has a comparable one, right? And these pre-made respirators already come with the filter, the material, the proper material, and you do not need to buy a filter for them, right? But these things tend to be hard to find, and the seal isn't as good. I'll be honest with you. The seal's pretty decent, as you can see, like the Safety Fit Plus. Look at it. Here it is in the package by Spirion, which is one of Honeywell's divisions. Basically, it has elastic straps, but it's not a silicone fit, and fabric can only fit so well. Fabric can never really be totally airtight, but it's good enough. It's pretty good. It's better than nothing. Okay, and you don't have to buy filters with it, so that's a plus. All right, so that's pre-made stuff, and let's talk about the filter grades. Okay, I'm gonna click that link right here that I provided, and we'll talk about filter grades. Let me just check the live stream, make sure we're good. Okay, right, we're live. Okay, so what we've got is NIOSH. NIOSH is the National, the National Institute of something. Basically, they approve the particulate filtering face-based respirator devices. And so all these filters have different grades. N95 is what you may have heard of in the news and whatnot. And then N95 mask is basically filters out 90% of airborne particles, I believe less than 0.3 microns. And it's not resistant to oil. Now that's an issue because oil can be in the air. Oil can be in biological fluids like spit, saliva, and snot. And essentially these things, their structural integrity may fail due to oil N95 masks. In addition, most of these pre-made N95 masks, like I said, they're not very tight fitting, so they leave something to be desired. Remember, it's filtering out 95%, that other 5%. Now, nonetheless, any kind of reduction in viral load is a benefit because viruses are probabilistic and there needs to be a certain threshold of the amount of the virus to infect you. One single virus particle cannot infect you. It needs to be a certain viral load, okay? But N95 is kind of the, where it starts in terms of the premium of how good these things are. Then you've got surgical N95, most of the same thing. N99, which means now instead of 95% of airborne particles, we're filtering 99% of the particles. Also not resistant to oil still, which again is a problem because some things are oily. And you don't want your mask to fail because of that. Now you got N100, which filters at least 99.97% of particles. That's also not resistant to oil. So the N in front of it means not resistant to oil. Then you've got R. Now R means resistant to oil, but not supremely resistant to oil. If you want supremely resistant to oil, you go to the P filter. P is supremely, strongly resistant to oil. R is somewhat resistant to oil. So you've got N, not resistant to oil, R, somewhat resistant, and P, strongly resistant to oil. And the numbers are 95, meaning 95% of particles filtered, 99, 99% of particles filtered, and 100, which is basically they just rounded up from 99.97% of particles filtered. So if you want to get the best, you got to get P100. If you want to get the best respirator, you're going to want to get a respirator that has a silicone seal. Usually these things aren't disposable. They're not, entirely fabric. Usually you have to buy the filter separately. So as you can see here, I'll show you. This is a particulate filter, a P100 from Honeywell. Now keep in mind, every brand of respirator, 3M, Honeywell, which is North Safety, right? There's MCS and there's Dentec. There's a lot of them. There's MSA. All these companies have different adapters. You cannot put a Honeywell filter on a 3M mask. You cannot put an MSA filter on a 3M mask, and so on and so forth. I made this mistake before. You cannot. So make sure you buy the right brand of filters for your respirator. Buy the same brand as the respirator brand. Okay? Now I'll show you the 3M P100. It looks exactly the same. Usually they're these pink discs. Oh, now this link's failing. I think it might be the slash at the end. Hold on, sorry. Ah, there we go. Well, I better fix that later. Don't worry, I'll fix it. All right, so they're all pink discs. This is a 3M P100 filter, right? And it's got like a bayonet style adapter, whereas the Honeywells are screw-on. And I'll show you. This is a 3M half mask. Usually a 6600 series is pretty comfortable. This right here is the 6600 series. Let me see, or is that the 6? Was this anything in the 6000 series tends to be pretty comfortable. So as you can see, this one already has P100 filters installed on it. Most respirators do not come with filters. Okay, you will have to buy these filters separately. They come in a 2-pack almost always. So you buy just 1 pack of filters, you'll get 2 filters, and you put them on the respirator. And this respirator is called a half mask. It's called a half mask. They tend to be called masks. Okay, half mask just meaning there isn't any eye protection. Okay, now I'll show you on eBay what these respirators look like. If I type in 3M half mask, and you can sort by lowest price and shipping, lowest first, sort by when it'll get there and all that, and they tend to be pretty affordable. $15 plus $5 shipping. It's your life we're talking about. You buy this, and then you buy a 3M P100 filter. I'll show you that. Go on eBay, boom. You get that for here's one for $16. Here's one for $18. They used to be $10, but look, you got to do what you got to do, right? Here's one actually, $9.50 plus $3 shipping. So you buy the P100 filters and you screw them on, and you're good to go. Now you don't only have to get 3M if you want. You want to look for something else. You don't like the 3M or they're sold out. Then you do Honeywell, which is also known as North Safety, and they have some pretty good masks. Here you go. Here's the 5500 series. Here's the 7700 series. Now I will warn you, you don't want to go with the canister style filters, because these canister style filters that usually come with the gas and chemical protection, and they're on a molecular level, like a molecular sieve, like they'll prevent ammonia or other, like what do you call it, like hydrogen, like carbon monoxide, hydrogen gas, things like that. They'll prevent that from going into sulfuric gas. They'll prevent that from going into the mask, chlorine gas. And you don't need that. You're not in a chemical war. And all it's going to do is make it harder to breathe, because they're thicker. There's more crap going on in them. There's these carbon and other kind of filtrate material in there. And it's just going to be harder to breathe with a chemical canister filter. Plus, it's going to be a lot heavier. Those canisters weigh quite a bit. So I really do recommend, as I've linked, that you get the P100 fabric filters. They're like pancakes. They're light, and they basically just sit quite easy on it, and you can breathe much easier through the P100 filters, rather than getting these the P100 pancake filters, rather than getting these canister filters. Okay, so that's just a half mask, right? Now you'll be 99% fine with just a half mask. But you could, if you really want to increase, likelihood that you don't get this thing, if someone sneezes in your face, or someone sneezed around or coughed around, and you don't want to get it from your eyes, you take additional risk, and you could buy non-vented goggles. So here's one that's smoke colored. I personally bought some non-vented goggles. I'm gonna grab them and I'm gonna show you. Now, unfortunately, everything's selling out, so they don't even have the clear ones anymore. But as you can see, these are the Cellstrom goggles, and these are the clear type, right? So, non-vented, because you don't want air coming in. They've got a silicone seal, as you can see here, and that makes them much better. Now, you can look on Amazon, see if you can find the clear colored ones. But listen, if you can't, if they're a little tinted, it's not going to kill you, and it's it's better than not having any protection on your eyes. So that's just a way to protect your eyes. You combine that with the half mask, and then you've got full protection of all your mucous membranes. except your anus and urethra and whatnot. But listen, that's probably not going to be the infection vector. So I'm going to grab my mask and I'm going to show you how my mask works. Now I have a North Safety, aka Honeywell 7700, I believe. Let me just check. Honeywell 7700. Let me just make sure that's the one. Yeah, yes, that is the one I have. Okay, so I'm just gonna look just to make sure. Okay, here we go. So this is it. As you can see, these filters screw on and off. Oops. Right, just showing you, demonstrating. Right. You just screw them on. Now, 3M is a bayonet style. It's like just a clicking style of filter, whereas the Honeywells are screw-ons. And you want to do it pretty tight. Make sure this thing ain't leaving any air gaps. Oops, well, that wasn't good. Came out. You don't want to do it too tight though. As you just see, it came out. Okay, that's good. All right, so it's got a head harness, and then it's got one that goes around the chin. This is a clasp, as you can see, and it connects over here. You see, just put it behind your head, and you clasp it. And that's it. I mean, you could still hear me pretty decently, and you'll hear there's a clicking when I breathe. That indicates that there's a positive air pressure. As you can hear it, every time I exhale, there's going to be a clicking. Okay? Very comfortable, good for long-term extended use. No problem wearing it. Easy to breathe because these are fabric filters, not canisters. And as long as you have that clicking, it's working. Okay? So, very good mask, comfortable, good for extended use. Now, I'd suggest you don't buy ones that aren't made from like silicone and things like that. You don't want things that are hard because they're just going to be uncomfortable and you're not going to want to wear it. This you can wear extended use when you're outside. You can breathe just fine through these filters with no gasping and very little resistance. I would definitely wear some type of mask respirator when I go outside. I'm just going to put this right here and we'll resume on the rest of the material. I'm almost done. So yes, half mask. Most vendors like Amazon are sold out. So I would search for eBay for 3M half mask or Honeywell half mask. And again, they don't come with filters usually. So I'd also make sure I ordered the same brand of P100 filters. Okay. I did link a video for the difference between masks and respirators. Masks just tend to leak a lot. They don't have a great seal. And then there are, again, these pre-made respirators, right? And they don't tend to have the greatest seal either, but it's still a better seal than a mask. A respirator has a better seal than a mask, but then a reusable respirator has an even better seal, okay? Like the 7700 series or the 3M 6000 series, okay? So that's about it. I'm going to check if there's anyone who left questions. Doesn't seem like it. I don't think I'm leaving anything out. I would recommend, if I could leave you with anything, I would just recommend that you don't go around, willy-nilly. Try to stay home. Try to isolate. If you do go out, wear a mask. Wear gloves. When you buy food, try to buy frozen. Try to nuke it. Wash your hands as much as you can. Just not to the point where your hands start cracking and that creates open sores and wounds, because that will make it worse. That's just an easy way for the virus to get in. I wish everyone the best of luck. Anyone who leaves questions, I will respond to them. Oh, one more thing. There are other treatments that are starting to work that we're getting reports from Japan about remdesivir, right? Remdesivir, experimental drug, holds promise for treating the coronavirus. It's basically just developed by Gilead. It is a flu drug, from what I understand. It was developed for Ebola, and Marburg viruses, and it's been shown to have pretty strong activity against the SARS. But the thing is, the reason why I'm mentioning all these other things like the quinine and whatnot is because good luck getting remdesivir. I listened to the White House talk today, and the problem is they're not shipping all the cures and stuff to everyone who has the virus. They're not saying, oh, okay, tomorrow we're going to USPS every single person so that in case they get it or in case this. No, instead what's happening is that if you get it, they tell you to stay home, where you could be potentially dying, right? They're not giving you anything for it. I mean, telling someone to self-isolate once they have it is pretty much not for most people, but it's like a death sentence for a lot of people. And then when they do decide, okay, well, this person's sick enough, let's put them in the hospital, they don't have a ventilator for you. So the outcome doesn't look too good for your survival or for, and then of course you got to worry about some permanent damage even if you do survive. So, overall, you just don't want to get the thing. The government just hasn't reacted fast enough to this, and the medical response, the medical sector just doesn't have the resources, doesn't have the drugs, they don't have the equipment, they just don't have the stuff to treat you. So don't become a statistic, don't get the virus. Good luck, and Godspeed to everyone. I hope this video helps. Leave a like and subscribe if it did. Church of Thought, peace out.